Return from the Abyss, Book 1. Chapter 2, False Kindness. The threshold of the ruins felt wrong. Not physically, the stone beneath Kayden's bare feet was solid enough, but in a way that scraped against instincts honed by 10 years of uninterrupted violence. The air pressure changed. The perpetual cold of the abyss seemed to deepen, burrowing into his bones with a different quality than the constant 5-degree chill outside. Silence. Not the absence of sound, but silence, a living thing that pressed against his eardrums like cotton stuffed too deep. In the abyss, there was always noise. Always. The distant screams of something dying, the wet sounds of feeding, the scrape of claws on stone, the occasional roar that made his teeth ache even from kilometers away. His world had a soundtrack of death and hunger. Here, nothing. Kayden's grip on the bone sword shifted, thumb finding the worn groove in the sinew wrapping that marked his ready position. His breathing slowed further, shallow enough that his chest barely moved. Every sense extended outward, searching for the threat that had to be there. Because in the abyss, silence meant a predator, and not just any predator, something smart enough to know that noise attracted competition. The entrance corridor stretched ahead, walls rising 3 meters on either side. The blue-white runes covering every surface provided the only illumination, their soft glow creating shadows that seemed to writhe independently of their sources. Kayden had learned to ignore visual anomalies. The abyss twisted perception as naturally as it twisted space. Trust nothing you see. Trust only what bleeds when you cut it. He moved forward, each step placed with precision that made no sound. The corridor widened gradually, opening into a vast hall. Kayden stopped at the threshold, taking it in. The chamber was circular, perhaps 30 meters across. The ceiling vaulted high overhead, lost in darkness that even the runes couldn't penetrate. Pillars of black stone rose at regular intervals, covered in more of those writhing symbols. Between them, carved into the walls, were reliefs depicting something, figures, battles. But the style was so alien that his mind couldn't quite parse the shapes into coherent images. In the center of the hall stood an altar. The structure was simple, a rectangular block of that same black stone, waist-high, maybe 2 meters long. But on top of it, contained in a shallow depression, was light, real light. Not the blood-red glow that suffused everything in the abyss. Not the black lightning that tore the sky at irregular intervals. This was white light, pure and steady, flickering like a candle flame, but brighter, so much brighter. Kayden stared at it for several seconds. The sight hit him harder than any physical blow could. 10 years. 10 years of crimson twilight, of shadows that never quite made sense, of a world rendered in shades of red and black. And here was light, the kind his mother used to light at night to ward off the darkness when storms rattled their small house. The memory surfaced before he could stop it. Her face, soft in candlelight, telling him stories about heroes while rain drummed on the roof. The pain that followed was familiar, expected. He let it wash through him and recede. Emotions were luxuries. He'd learned that lesson in blood. Focus. The light was wrong. Everything here was wrong. Wrong meant deadly. He circled the chamber's perimeter, staying close to the wall, sword ready. His eyes swept the space constantly. Floor, walls, ceiling, the spaces between pillars, the altar itself. Looking for movement, looking for the telltale shimmer of camouflage. Looking for anything that would reveal where the predator was hiding. Because something lived here. Had to. Nothing in the abyss was unguarded. Especially not something as valuable as shelter with real light. 3/4 of the way around the chamber, Kayden heard it. A sound, barely audible, almost swallowed by the oppressive silence. A soft scraping, like claws on stone, coming from behind one of the pillars to his left. His body tensed, sword rising slightly. Every muscle coiled, ready to explode into motion. His eyes locked on the pillar's base, watching the shadow there, waiting for... Something small emerged. Kayden's brain took a full second to process what he was seeing because it made no sense. The creature was tiny, maybe 40 centimeters from nose to tail tip. It looked cute. That was the only word that fit. Large, luminous eyes that caught the altar's light and reflected it in shades of amber. Soft, fluffy fur the color of smoke. A long, bushy tail that curled around its body. Small paws with what looked like retractable claws, currently sheathed. Rounded ears that swiveled toward him. It looked like the barn cats that had lived in Ashfall. The ones children used to play with, feeding them scraps of fish and milk. The creature sat down, regarding him with an expression that was almost friendly. "Hello," it said. Kayden's body jerked in surprise. The thing had spoken. In a high-pitched, almost musical voice that reminded him of wind chimes. "I'm sorry if I startled you," the creature continued, tilting its head in a gesture that read as apologetic. "It's been so long since anyone came here. So very long." Kayden said nothing, couldn't speak even if he'd wanted to. His throat had forgotten how to form words beyond the most basic sounds, and even those rarely emerged. But his mind was racing. Speaking. It was speaking. He'd never encountered anything in the abyss that could speak. Never. 10 years, hundreds of different predators, and not one had shown the slightest hint of intelligence beyond hunting cunning. This was new. New was dangerous. "My name is Whisper," the creature said, standing and taking a few steps closer. Its movements were liquid, graceful. "I live here in the ruins. It's safe here, peaceful. The others don't come here. The light keeps them away. You could rest here. You look tired." The creature's voice was soothing, almost hypnotic. And God's help him, Kayden was tired. 10 years of constant vigilance, of never sleeping more than an hour at a time, of always being 3 seconds from death. The word rest shouldn't have had power over him, but it did. His grip on the sword loosened slightly, just a fraction. His shoulders dropped perhaps a centimeter from their rigid tension. His guard lowered by the smallest margin. 2 seconds. That was how long he gave in to the temptation. 2 seconds of wanting to believe that maybe, just this once, something in the abyss wasn't trying to kill him. Whisper moved. The transformation was instantaneous, reality snapping from one state to another without transition. The cute creature exploded outward, body elongating, limbs stretching. But the worst part was the mouth. The jaw opened and kept opening. 180 degrees, splitting the head in half horizontally, revealing a maw lined with hundreds of needle teeth that looked like translucent shards of bone. Each one was barbed, designed to hook into flesh and never let go. The inside of the mouth glowed with a sickly pale light. The mental attack hit Kayden like a physical blow. Terror. Not the normal fear of death, but something deeper, more primal. Hallucinations exploded across his vision. Images of the village, of his parents' bodies rotting in their bed, of the neighbors dragging him toward the creature in black, of the yellow eyes, of 10 years of darkness and blood and screaming and dying alone in the red twilight. For most people, the assault would have been paralyzing, would have frozen them in place while the predator struck. Kayden had stopped being most people somewhere around year 3. His body moved before his conscious mind processed the threat.
The reaction was pure reflex, encoded into his nerves through thousands of fights where hesitation meant death. The sword came up in a diagonal slash, rising from low to high. His hips twisted, adding torque. His rear foot pushed off the stone floor, driving forward momentum. Whisper was fast, inhumanly fast. It leaped, jaws spread wide, aiming for his throat. But Kayden's strike was already in motion, blade intersecting the creature's trajectory at the perfect angle. The bone sword, sharpened to a razor-thin edge through years of careful maintenance, met the creature's neck. There was resistance, just enough to tell him he'd hit something solid. Then the blade passed through. Whisper's head separated from its body in midair, both pieces continuing forward from momentum. The body crashed into Kayden's chest, knocking him back 2 steps. The head bounced off his shoulder and clattered to the floor. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then the body began to disintegrate. The flesh turned to gray ash, flaking away like burnt paper. Within seconds, nothing remained but a small pile of powder on the stone floor. Kayden stood perfectly still, sword held in a defensive position, waiting for the next attack. His breathing hadn't changed. His heartbeat was elevated but controlled.
He'd killed the thing, but that didn't mean it was over. He'd learned that lesson multiple times. Some predators hunted in pairs. Some could regenerate from decapitation. Some had a second phase. A full minute passed. Nothing moved. The silence returned, heavier than before. Finally, Kayden lowered the sword and approached the pile of ash. Something glinted within it, catching the light from the altar. He crouched, using the sword's tip to carefully push aside the ash. A crystal, the size of a walnut, roughly spherical, but with irregular facets that seemed to shift when viewed from different angles. The color was difficult to describe. Dark scarlet, almost black, with veins of lighter red running through it like frozen lightning. It pulsed with a slow, rhythmic glow, like a heartbeat, but slower. A shard. Had to be. He'd found smaller ones before, over the years. 3 times total, though 2 had crumbled to dust when he'd tried to touch them. The third, the size of a pea, he'd swallowed out of desperation when a gut wound should have killed him. It had closed the injury in minutes, saving his life. This one was much larger. Kayden reached out slowly, extending his right hand. His fingers closed around the crystal. Heat. The shard felt like a coal pulled fresh from a fire. Not hot enough to burn, but hot enough to make his hand want to jerk away reflexively. He forced his fingers to stay closed, lifting the crystal from the ash pile. The heat intensified. Then the shard moved. It didn't roll or slip, it moved independently, pressing against his palm with force. Before Kayden could process what was happening, the crystal pushed into his skin. No, not into, through. Passing through flesh like it wasn't there, but leaving behind sensation. Terrible sensation. Pain exploded up his arm. Not burning, not cutting, but something worse. It felt like his blood was boiling in his veins, like every nerve was being flayed, like his bones were cracking and reforming and cracking again. The agony was so complete, so overwhelming, that his vision widened out. A scream tore from his throat, the first true scream he'd made in years, raw and primal. His legs gave out. He collapsed to his knees, then to his side, curling around the burning agony in his hand. The sword clattered away, forgotten. Every muscle locked rigid, his back arched. His free hand clawed at the stone floor, nails breaking. Through the pain, through the white-hot fire consuming him from the inside, Kayden felt something spreading. From his palm, up his arm, across his chest, down into his core. Like liquid metal being poured through his circulatory system, replacing his blood with molten agony. His vision darkened at the edges, tunneled down to a single point,
The flickering light from the altar, growing dimmer with each second. No. Consciousness was survival. Unconsciousness was death. That was the rule. He'd held to it for 10 years. Couldn't break it now. Couldn't. The darkness swallowed the light. Kayden's body went limp on the cold stone floor of the ancient ruins, the shard's scarlet glow fading as it fully merged with his flesh. In the absolute silence, the only sound was his shallow, uneven breathing.
Thank you for listening. New chapters will be released daily on the channel. This audio material was produced exclusively for the Section 56 channel. All rights reserved. Have a nice day.